Hi, I'm Anaya Rice, and you are watching County Cable Montgomery.
Thanks for watching this special edition of the Council in Brief. I'm Susan Kennedy. The Montgomery County Council has unanimously approved the fiscal year 2012 operating budget, and in doing so has created a blueprint for addressing this county's structural budget deficit. The budget closes a $300 million deficit and also includes agreements that protect this county's fiscal future. The $4.4 billion budget reflects just over a 2% increase from last year's budget. The biggest step the council took this year was the decision not to apply for a waiver for the maintenance of effort funding for education. The State Board of Education announced it agrees with the county government's decision not to apply and stands by the budget proposal.
It's only up from here. This was a moment in time for the council to make a very tough decision to be able to do what you heard happen today, which is we will be able to now more fully fund other county agencies that people pay taxes for, and they expect the services that they receive from our police and fire, which have been dramatically cut over the last 3 years, libraries, which took a 25% cut last year, the safety net programs for so many families who are struggling in this economy. We feel like we stood shoulder to shoulder today and we said, this is the way forward. It might not feel good today, but we have set the wheels in motion for a more sustainable Montgomery County, and I think 3 years from now people will look back on these decisions maybe a little differently.
Our county is still emerging from a great recession, and like local governments throughout our country, we have to go to a more sustainable economic future. And the only way to get to a sustainable economic future is to restructure some of our relationships with our county employees, because they represent 80 to 90% of our costs. So if you don't go to that 80 to 90%, you can't get yourself where you need to be. But is this painful? Absolutely. Anytime you ask your employees to assume more responsibility for their health care costs or their pension contributions at a time when people are struggling to meet their daily lives, this is not an easy thing to ask people to do. So none of my colleagues take great joy in this budget. We felt like we had to do this, and I feel we did it responsibly and compassionately and fairly, and I think that's all we could hope for.
Overall, the school system's budget will decrease by just $18 million, or less than 1%, because of an increase in funding from the state. Council members say cuts will be aimed largely at employee benefits and should not affect students or classroom instruction.
I don't believe that we have now somehow turned the clock backward, or from now on we're just going to go downhill. I don't believe that. I think that this is a moment in time that requires very strong fiscal parameters, and that from now on, as we go into the future and things get better, we will be able to then prioritize again and fund those initiatives within the school system that we understand have a big impact in academic achievement. So I think we'll be okay, and I trust the leadership of the Board of Education, as well as our new superintendent, Mr. Starr, to set the course for this year to keep us, achieving great outcomes for our students. And I look forward to making sure that we continue to fund and to support education of our children, both when they're inside the school and when they're outside the school classroom.
Ultimately, we have to find a way to keep our schools first in the nation. People come here for the schools, and that's going to be, and is always, the first priority. We've made it more possible to tackle that issue. Our libraries, our parks, our public safety, our safety net, these are all critical services that without resources, we just can't meet the priorities. So, we're going to continue to have tough budgets in the next couple of years, but I'm optimistic that, they will keep improving rather than getting worse.
The council's package also mitigates the impact of the proposed benefit cost increase on county government employees. Medical HMOs will see no change, and Care First will change to 75-25. Those changes will not be implemented until next year. In the end, those decisions will save the county $273 million over the next 6 years.
So this figure is good until the end of May.
We completely threw out the window what the executive sent over here, which would have been a significant hit on county government employees' health care benefits. We completely took that off the table. As a matter of fact, some benefits remained exactly the same, and if you move into an HMO, there is no change to your cost shift. So there was a lot of work done here. A lot of thought went into this. We worked hand in glove with the employee unions, and Councilmember Berliner and myself really forged a new blueprint, we believe, for how to sit down and talk through these items with the leadership of the employee unions, and we feel very proud that we were able to make headway.
Even with this year's increase, the budget is less than the approved budget for last year. However, the savings the council was able to achieve through a variety of models, programs that were on the chopping block were able to be restored. Among them, 6 school resource officers.
It's important for us to promote safety in our schools. I know the great work that our police department does in terms of protecting our children, and so even though we're dealing with a scaled down program, it gives us the ability to now go over the summer and do an evaluation of the school resource officer program and make sure that it's exactly what we need for all of our high schools and I think our middle schools.
The executive's proposal had eliminated funding for volunteer fire and rescue services. Council members restored 90% of that money for this agency that Councilmember Phil Andrews says plays a crucial role in the county's overall public safety.
The executive proposed zero funding for the Montgomery County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, a really unwise decision because the volunteers play a critical role in recruiting fire and rescue volunteers that save taxpayers millions of dollars every year. And so the council very wisely restored almost all that funding, restored 90% of what the executive cut from the Montgomery County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association, so they can now continue to do their excellent efforts that benefit us all, that provide fire and rescue volunteers who are a critical part of the fire service along very much with our career fire and rescue personnel. We need both to be strong, and with this budget, the volunteer service will continue to be strong.
This is the third consecutive year the budget has been complicated by the recession. Despite that, the council's budget protects core services and safety net programs. Montgomery Cares is one of those services. The program provides health care to medically uninsured and low-income residents.
We did maintain the reimbursement rate for county health clinics at $62 per visit, and that will enable those clinics to keep their doors open. We have a large and unfortunately growing number of residents without health insurance. These are working people, but who simply can't afford their own health insurance and maybe just may have incomes that are just a little higher than what makes them eligible for Medicaid, or who may not be eligible for Medicaid. So if we don't care for them in these clinics, it's likely that they'll present in emergency rooms at a point at which their illness is much harder to treat and much more expensive. So this is good public health policy, but these clinics are struggling nonprofit operations, and if we were to roll back the reimbursement as had been proposed, some of them would likely close.
There were some county agencies that were also spared by this budget. When it was all said and done, Montgomery College, police, libraries, and parks all had some funding restored. Councilmember Nancy Florine is especially happy Park and Planning got back just over $1.5 million.
To get out of this hole we're in, we need to expand our economic base. And the energy and enthusiasm that our planning people are evidencing is turning up in, I think, renewed investment in Montgomery County. And we've also got a little bit of money in the budget for marketing Montgomery County and economic development. And again, that sends a message out there: we are open for business.
The budget includes reserves of 6.1%, which is consistent with the new reserves policy adopted by the council last year. It also exceeds savings proposed by the executive's recommended budget. Councilmember Mark Elrich used one word to describe what the council did: responsible.
Where last year we spent $0 for things that are really measures of being responsible, and this year we had to put $82 million into those measures, and that's $82 million that was not available for programs. And so part of the reason we've had to face some of these cuts is that money had to go into things that, I think are responsible things the government needs to do. That's tough. The other good stuff is probably We did restore a lot of the cuts that the executive had made. We didn't restore everything, but we took a real hard look at the social service cuts, the libraries, some of the transportation stuff, and said, we really don't want to go there, and made the decision to restore funding in those areas.
With unanimous approval of this year's budget, council members agree they have taken a big step in protecting the fiscal health of the county. Valerie Irvin says the council never lost sight of its mission to keep Montgomery County one of the best places to live.
We feel like we stood shoulder to shoulder today and we said, this is the way forward. It might not feel good today, but we have set the wheels in motion for a more sustainable Montgomery County, and I think 3 years from now, people will look back on these decisions maybe a little differently.
Thanks for watching this special edition of the Council in Brief. The Council now takes a short recess and will return to regular business on June 13th. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy. Thanks for tuning in.